It's 23:45 on October 19th, 1942. The Solomon Islands are black, not dark black, no moon, no horizon, just water heat and the low mechanical growl of gasoline engines cutting through the night. A PT boat slides forward at reduced speed. Wooden hull, thin planking, enough fuel on board to turn the entire thing into a floating fireball if someone gets lucky with a tracer round. Everyone knows that. Nobody says it out loud. Ahead, silhouettes move across the water. Japanese barges, WW2 barges. Slow, low in the water. Ugly little things. Not warships, not fishing boats either. Somewhere in between. Each one carrying troops' ammunition food. 60 soldiers per barge, give or take. Enough to change tomorrow's fight on Guadalcanal. The radar picks them up first. The eyes confirm it second. 4 contacts, 8 knots, line formation. Exactly what intelligence said would be coming tonight. The PT boat has torpedoes, big ones, heavy ones, each weighing more than a small car, each carrying enough explosive to break a destroyer in half. On paper, it's an unfair fight. In reality, it's a joke. The torpedoes are set for a minimum depth of 10 feet. The barges draw barely 5. The math is simple. The torpedoes will run clean under the targets like ghosts and explode somewhere harmless in the darkness. The enemy won't even know how close they came to dying. So the boat carries weapons it cannot use. The 50 caliber machine guns swivel uselessly on their mounts. Against wood, they're monsters. Against steel plate, they spark and complain. The Japanese knew this. That's why the barges wear armor just thick enough to laugh at bullets and keep moving. Then the Type 92 machine guns open up. Thin orange tracers stitch across the water, skipping closer with every burst. Not accurate. Not precise. But you don't need precision when you're firing at a wooden boat full of gasoline. This has happened before, too many times. PT boats spot barges. PT boats close in. Torpedoes miss. Machine guns fail. Barges return fire. PT boats withdraw damaged, burning, or not at all. 17 sailors dead in weeks. 6 boats gone. And tomorrow night the barges will come again. The Americans call it the Tokyo Express. It sounds almost clever. Almost efficient. Night after night, supplies slip through the dark, while the people sent to stop them stare at weapons that don't work. This is the problem. Not courage. Not training. Not willingness to fight. The problem is geometry, and steel, and water depth. The war does not care how brave you are. It only cares whether your weapon reaches the target. Right now it doesn't. If this were a story about cowardice, it would be easy to tell. You would blame fear, or hesitation, or poor training. You would say the crews panicked in the dark and made mistakes, but that would be comfortable. And wrong. The men on these PT boats are doing exactly what they were trained to do. They are following Doctrine. Perfectly. The Doctrine says you launch torpedoes from 800 to 1,000 yards. Far enough to survive return fire. Close enough for a reasonable chance of a hit. This Doctrine was written for destroyers, cruisers, transport ships. Big targets, deep hulls, predictable silhouettes. Against those targets, it worked. Against these barges, it's useless. The barges ride low. 5 feet of draft, sometimes less when lightly loaded. The torpedoes don't care about bravery or intent. They run at their set depth, 10 feet. Always 10. They pass underneath and keep going loyal to physics and completely indifferent to the war happening above them. The Doctrine doesn't bend, so the boats break. Commanders know this. Crews know it too. Everyone knows it. But Doctrine has weight. It comes with manuals, training hours, approval stamps. It's safer to fail correctly than to succeed incorrectly. So they keep doing it. They close to 1,000 yards. They fire torpedoes they know will miss. Then they wait exposed, while the enemy responds with machine guns designed specifically to punish wooden hulls. When the bullets start finding their range, the PT boats turn away and disappear back into the dark, having achieved nothing except surviving one more night. Sometimes they don't survive. 17 sailors dead in weeks, boats burned to the waterline, others dragged back to base with holes punched through plywood like it was paper. The losses don't shock anyone anymore. They're becoming routine, and routine is dangerous. The .50 caliber machine guns are supposed to compensate. On paper, they're terrifying. High rate of fire, heavy rounds, enough kinetic energy to do serious damage. On steel-plated barges, they spark. That's it. No penetration, no structural damage. Just noise and light, which is not what you want at night when the enemy is aiming back. The Japanese understand this equation perfectly. That's why they armor the barges just enough. Not battleship thick, just thick enough. Efficient, cheap, brutally practical. And the Tokyo Express keeps running. Night after night, supplies move through waters theoretically controlled by American forces. The PT boats are present. They are aggressive. They are brave. They are also strategically irrelevant. This is what an outdated system looks like in combat. Not dramatic collapse, not heroic failure, just repetition. The same approach producing the same results over and over again until the cost becomes unbearable. The tragedy isn't that the weapons are weak, it's that they are being used exactly as intended. Morning comes to Henderson Field without ceremony, no victory parades, no speeches, just heat dust and the smell of burned aviation fuel that never quite leaves the air. The airfield looks less like a base and more like a junkyard that lost a fight. Wrecked fighters sit where they fell. Some nose down in coral, others missing wings, tails engines. Skeletons of aircraft that tried, failed, and never flew again. Dozens of them. Bell P-39 Airacobras, once modern, once promising. Now scrap metal under the tropical sun. The Airacobra was always an odd machine. Its engine sat behind the pilot, not in front. A long drive shaft ran under the cockpit to the propeller. Engineers said it improved balance. Pilots said it made the plane feel strange. Both were right. But that strange design left empty space in the nose. And the Army filled it with something very deliberate. A 37mm cannon. Not a machine gun. A cannon. Built to punch through aircraft light armor anything thin enough to be convinced by explosive force. It fired automatically. 30 rounds per magazine. Fast, violent, unsubtle. On paper, it was excessive. In the air, it was devastating for the brief moments the Airacobra survived combat. On the ground, after crashes and belly landings and shattered wings, the cannons remained. Bent fuselages, twisted propellers, cracked engine mounts. But the guns were still there, intact, bolted into wrecks no one expected to ever need again. Lieutenant Robert Lynch walks the field slowly. No rush, no entourage, just boots on coral and eyes that no longer look at airplanes as airplanes. He counts. 1 wreck, 2, 3, 20. More. The aircraft are useless. Everyone agrees on that. Engines seized, airframes broken, not worth repairing. They are written off, logged, forgotten. The cannons are another matter. Lynch stops beside one wrecked Airacobra, its nose buried in the ground, like it simply gave up. The barrel of the 37mm protrudes forward, dark and solid. It looks absurdly out of place, like a weapon waiting for a different war. He doesn't touch it. He doesn't need to. He does the math. Rate of fire, magazine size, explosive payload, weight, recoil. He compares it quietly to everything that hasn't worked at sea. Torpedoes that run too deep, machine guns that bounce and spark, doctrines that refuse to adapt. The cannon doesn't care about water depth. It doesn't care about drafts or silhouettes or minimum settings. It hits what you point it at. The solution doesn't announce itself. There's no dramatic revelation, no lightning strike. Just a realization so simple it feels almost insulting. The weapon they need has been sitting in plain sight, rusting politely, while men die offshore, trying to make the wrong tools do the impossible. Lynch looks back toward the water. Somewhere beyond the trees, PT boats wait for nightfall and another round of failure. The question is no longer whether a solution exists. The question is whether anyone is willing to use it. There is no meeting, no paperwork. No one draws a diagram on a chalkboard and debates options. War does not schedule innovation politely. By early afternoon, the decision has already been made, quietly, without ceremony, without permission. They don't have a process for this. No approval stamps, no doctrine, no manual explaining how to remove an aircraft cannon from a wrecked fighter and bolt it onto a wooden boat designed for something else entirely. If anyone asks later, this will be described as field expedient. For now, it's just necessity. The first cutting torch bites into metal just after midday. The sound echoes across Henderson Field, sharp and ugly. Sparks fly. Someone jokes that the Cobra finally gets a useful mission. No one laughs very hard. The cannon is heavier than it looks. Everything is heavier in wartime than it appears on paper. Bolts don't want to move. Hydraulic lines refuse to cooperate. Tropical heat has fused parts together like they were never meant to separate again. They don't have the right tools. They use the closest ones. That's close enough. Penetrating oil would help. Henderson Field doesn't have any. Aviation gasoline does a reasonable impression. They wait. Count seconds. Try again. It moves. Time becomes the enemy now. Not the Japanese. Not tonight. The sun is already sliding west. When it goes down, visibility disappears. And whatever they build has to be finished before dark, or it won't be finished at all. 3 cannons come free. One is cracked. Useless. Another is damaged, but fixable if someone files metal carefully and pretends they're in a machine shop instead of a combat zone. The third is clean. Perfect by the standards of the moment. That's the one. Mounting it is another problem entirely. PT boats were never designed for this. Their decks were built to hold machine guns, not automatic cannons firing explosive shells. There is no mount waiting, no reinforced pedestal hidden under a tarp. Just plywood oak framing and optimism. So they make one. Scrap steel from destroyed landing gear. Pipe sections cut to length by eye. A base plate drawn in grease pencil on whatever flat surface will stay still long enough. The design takes less than an hour because there is no time to be clever. The welding starts, stops, starts again. The generator coughs and dies every few minutes. Fuel is rationed. Even innovation has to wait its turn. They weld in short bursts, letting the machine cool, then go again. Ugly welds. Functional welds. The kind you hope never have to be inspected closely. Someone mentions recoil. Someone else mentions that they'll find out soon enough. By nightfall, it looks like something built in a high school shop class. Crooked. Burned. Unpainted. But it rotates, more or less. It will hold the weight. Probably. They load it onto a truck and drive it toward the watermen riding in the back to keep it from bouncing itself apart. The road is rough. The cannon survives. At the dock, the PT boat waits. Quiet. Patient. Dangerous. They measure the deck. Mark the spots. Drill by hand. Slowly. Each hole takes half an hour. Sweat drips. Muscles burn. No one complains. Complaints don't make holes appear faster. The base plate goes down. Bolts tighten. The mount holds. When the cannon is lifted into place, it settles with a heavy finality. This is no longer a thought experiment. This is a weapon on a boat. There's been no test firing, no stress test, no training. Night is coming, and the barges will be running. There is no test fire. No one rolls the boat forward and squeezes the trigger just to see what happens. Ammunition is too precious. Time is gone. Night has arrived, and the sea does not wait for quality control. The PT boat slips away from the dock under a sky with no moon and no forgiveness. Engines are throttled back. The hull cuts the water quietly, almost politely, as if it isn't carrying something completely unproven, bolted to its bow. The gun sits there dark and unfamiliar, bigger than anything that has ever lived on this deck. The men know every sound this boat usually makes. Tonight, there is a new weight in the front, and everyone feels it even before the waves do. Visibility is poor. The horizon barely exists. The sea is flat enough to be dangerous. Calm water carries sound. Radar picks them up first. 4 contacts. Slow. Steady. Exactly where they shouldn't be. Japanese barges. The PT boat turns to intercept. The range closes. 1,000 yards. 800. 600. This is closer than Doctrine ever wanted. Doctrine is not invited tonight. The barges detect them. A Type 92 machine gun flashes. Tracers cut across the water low at first, then climbing. The bursts are not precise, but precision is not required when you're throwing lead at a wooden boat full of gasoline. The gunner climbs into position behind the cannon. He sits on an ammunition box, 30 rounds per magazine, 6 magazines stacked beside him. That's all they have. No one knows if that will be enough. No one knows if the gun will fire at all. At 800 yards, the order comes. Fire. The cannon answers with a sound that does not belong on a boat. A deep, violent concussion. The muzzle flash turns the bow white for a split second. The recoil slams backward. The deck flexes. Everyone feels it. The mount holds. The cannon keeps firing. Rounds streak forward and hit the lead barge along the waterline. The first impacts punch through steel like it was thin tin. Then, something inside the barge decides it has had enough of this war. Fire erupts. Not smoke, not sparks. Fire. Men jump into the water. The barge continues forward for a few seconds, burning, then slows and dies. The gunner empties the magazine in seconds. The cannon stops. Silence except for the engines and incoming fire. 8 seconds. That's how long it takes to pull the empty magazine free and slam the next one into place. 8 seconds, crouched in the open under tracer fire, knowing exactly how flammable everything around you is. The gun fires again. The second barge tries to turn away. Too late. The cannon walks its fire across the deck. An explosion rips the barge apart. This one doesn't burn. It detonates. The blast lights up the night and shakes the PT boat like a slap. The formation collapses. One barge turns north. One turns south. The PT boat chases the closer target. The cannon swings, fighting heat and friction. The mount groans but keeps moving. Incoming rounds punch holes through the bow. Wood splinters. One round tears through the deck not far from the gunner's legs. He doesn't stop. The third magazine empties. The barge shudders and loses power. Men abandon it. It drifts dead in the water. Then the PT boat turns away. The mission is done. Not because they are out of targets, but because staying would be asking the night to collect its debt. When they disappear back into darkness, the cannon is still hot. The deck is scorched. The mount is scarred. The boat is alive. Behind them, the sea burns. Whatever this weapon is, it works. By dawn, the story has already changed. The PT boat returns with scorch marks on the deck, splintered wood along the bow, and a cannon that looks like it has aged years overnight. The crew looks the same way. Tired, quiet, very awake. They don't call it a victory. Sailors almost never do. They call it results. 2 barges destroyed, 1 disabled, 0 American casualties. That sentence travels fast. In the weeks before, patrol reports had followed a familiar pattern. Contact made, torpedoes fired, no hits, enemy return fire, withdrawal, sometimes damage, sometimes bodies. The language was careful, almost apologetic, as if the paper itself understood how little had been accomplished. This report reads differently. It doesn't speculate. It counts. Barges engaged, barges burning. Barges no longer delivering anything to anyone. The comparison is unavoidable. Before, the cannon PT boats might see targets night after night and come home empty-handed if they came home at all. After the cannon, a single patrol produces visible, undeniable effects on the water, and the boats survive. That matters more than anything else. Losses had been quietly accepted as the price of operating in shallow, hostile waters with wooden hulls and outdated assumptions. Now the numbers shift. Boats come back. Crews rotate. The casualty lists stop growing so quickly. Commanders notice patterns. Patterns are the only language institutions truly respect. The Japanese notice too. Intercepted radio traffic changes tone. Barge crews report PT boats closing aggressively, firing heavy shells, punching through armor. That was supposed to be enough. The old confidence evaporates. Barges scatter sooner. Convoys break formation at the first hint of contact. Fear is not a doctrine, but it is a force multiplier. Within hours, then days, the requests start coming in. Other PT boat captains want the same weapon. Immediately. Not next month. Not after testing. Now. There are arguments, of course. There always are. About safety. About stress on the hull. About ammunition supply. About what happens when the mount fails and kills someone. Those arguments existed before the patrol. After it, they sound theoretical. The numbers don't argue back. They just sit there. A cannon improvised from wreckage has done what purpose-built systems could not. It hit the target. It stopped the supply flow. It brought the boat home. No one claims it is perfect. The mount wears quickly. The magazines are slow to change. Ammunition disappears faster than anyone likes. Maintenance becomes a daily ritual instead of a checklist. But the equation has flipped. Before, PT boats risked their lives for a chance to inconvenience the enemy. Now the enemy risks everything just by showing up. That shift is impossible to ignore. By the end of the week, higher command is no longer asking whether the cannon works. That question has been answered at sea under fire, where questions tend to be resolved permanently. The new question is how fast this can spread. How many boats? How many guns? How many nights before the Tokyo Express becomes something else entirely? What began as an unauthorized gamble is now data. And data in war is harder to dismiss than heroism. The bureaucracy arrives late as it always does, not because it doesn't care, but because it cannot move until someone else proves survival is possible. Now that proof exists. It smells like burned powder and scorched wood. Reports move upward, carefully worded, measured. Tables instead of adjectives. Charts instead of stories. The same innovation that began with cutting torches and borrowed tools is translated into a language headquarters understands. The Bureau of Ordnance reads the numbers. They see barges destroyed per patrol increase sharply. They see PT boats returning intact. They see ammunition expenditure that finally produces results instead of excuses. The conclusion is unavoidable even if it arrives reluctantly. This works. What happens next is not dramatic. There are no speeches, no medals for improvisation, just orders. Standardization begins. Mounts are redesigned so they don't wobble themselves apart. Bearings are improved. Stress points are reinforced. Ammunition supply is formalized. Maintenance procedures are written down so fewer things break at the worst possible moment. The weapon evolves. The original aircraft cannon, good enough for desperation, gives way to a naval version built to survive saltwater heat and sustained fire. Heavier, stronger, more reliable. The M4 becomes the M9. It is still not elegant, but it is lethal, and it is predictable. Institutions like predictable lethality. The change spreads. In the Pacific, PT boats stop hunting with torpedoes alone. They close aggressively. They fire directly. Barges burn faster than they can be replaced. Supply routes thin out, then disappear. In the Mediterranean, the same problem appears under a different flag. Shallow draft vessels. Night movement. Torpedoes that pass underneath. The solution travels with the boats. The cannon does not care what language is spoken on shore. In the Philippines, the effect compounds. Narrow waters, dense traffic, plenty of targets. The PT boats become hunters instead of hopeful interrupters. The enemy adapts, but adaptation takes time. Time is something supply convoys no longer have. Quietly, without a press release, PT boats change identity. They are no longer torpedo boats that occasionally fire guns. They are gunboats that happen to carry torpedoes. The shift is subtle on paper and enormous in practice. Tactics change with it. Boats operate in pairs. One closes to engage with the cannon. The other covers with machine guns watching for larger threats. Ammunition loads are calculated. Engagement ranges are refined. What began as improvisation becomes doctrine. The irony is unavoidable. The system that resisted unauthorized modification now depends on it. The same organization that demands approval stamps eventually issues them retroactively, blessing what sailors already proved under fire. No one pretends this is a perfect process. It is simply the one war tolerates. Innovation moves at the speed of survival. Paper follows later. By the time official mounts roll off factory lines, many boats already carry field-built versions that have survived dozens of patrols. The factories improve them. The crews trust them. The enemy fears them. The lesson is not about a cannon. It is about what happens when necessity outruns permission. The PT boats did not wait for doctrine to catch up. They forced it to. Wars are often remembered as battles, dates, and names carved into stone. But wars are not decided by stone. They are decided by moments when someone acts before permission arrives. What happened with the PT boats was not inevitable. It was not guaranteed. It required individuals willing to accept personal risk for institutional failure. If the cannon had torn through the deck and killed the crew, careers would have ended in silence. If the idea had failed, it would have been filed away as reckless improvisation. Instead, it worked. Not because it was elegant, not because it followed procedure, but because it solved the real problem in front of it, using what was available under conditions that did not allow waiting. This is the difference between improvisation and chaos. Improvisation has a purpose. Chaos does not. The men who authorized and built those first mounts understood something bureaucracy often forgets. In combat, delay is a decision, and it is rarely a neutral one. The system eventually adapted as systems do when survival demands it. It standardized the solution. It improved it. It claimed it. That is how institutions learn. Slowly. After the fact. The sailors learned faster. They learned that a wooden boat did not have to be fragile if it could strike first. That a shallow draft enemy was not untouchable if you aimed directly at it. That doctrine was a tool, not a law of nature. Japanese crews noticed the change before paperwork did. They gave the PT boats names. Devil boats. Green dragons. Not because they were large or armored, but because they appeared suddenly hit hard and vanished into darkness, leaving fire behind. Those names were not propaganda. They were respect earned under fire. After the war, the PT boats faded from headlines. Jets replaced propellers. Missiles replaced guns. But the lesson they left behind did not expire. Innovation does not begin in offices. It begins where failure is no longer acceptable. It spreads when results are undeniable. And it becomes doctrine only after someone has already survived using it. The war ended. The boats were scrapped or preserved. The cannons rusted in museums or silence. But the pattern remains. When the next crisis arrives and procedures are not ready, the question will be the same. Do you wait for approval, or do you solve the problem